concussion protocol. So Dakota Kai ends up with a concussion. She's on the sidelines until doctors decide that she's over it, basically, which is fine. And absolutely what you should be doing. Now, we're going to be talking about, obviously, concussion protocol now, but I want to compare it to back in the day. And I know you're probably stifling a laugh as I say concussion protocol back in the late 90s and 2000s. That being said, what was concussion protocol in WWE, TNA, WCW, ECW, but WWF, WWE especially? Was there any concussion protocol? Would you dare even tell the agents or whoever that you had a concussion?
Can we fill in the time with some royalty-free knockoff version of the Jeopardy music where I'm expected to give an answer?
Why don't I do Herb Albert? So
Oh, that's all right. Here's the way concussion protocol used to work in wrestling. You're still good to go out there, right? Right? You feel good, right? How many fingers am I holding up? Now listen, we care about you. You're going to lose your spot, but the most important thing is your health. So you are good to go out there, right? I'm paraphrasing it, but it is very much let's go back to the Tony Storm thing because I think this needs context. What happened to Tony Storm when she came back? Like, what was the impact she made coming back after being off for 4 months?
Fairly big, but then it was a tired crowd. She got some sort of reaction, but then obviously she wasn't the timeless Tony Storm that people were expecting.
Is it the same as when she was there the first time? Would it have been the same if she never went away? It would have been much more. She would have been much more over as a character. The show that went from a stadium to an arena probably would have sold a lot more tickets because she was on the show and figured in over those 4 months. I'm trying to put this as delicately as I can, but the reason why the boys and the girls work through injuries and are afraid of losing their spots is because they are going to lose their spots. Simple as that. You may not lose how can I say? You may not lose a place, a spot on the show. You still might be figured in some way, somehow, but your spot is gone and somebody will take your spot. Now it's up to creative to say, how do we keep them in that spot without compromising physically their medical condition? That's where creative is really, they fall far short. They're way too lazy, in my estimation, when you're handed a timeless Tony Storm, possibly the most original, innovative gimmick, not only in AEW, but recent history. That's my take. Mm-hmm. And you piss it away, as she would say. I think she says that. She says other cool old-timey stuff.
She probably said it. WWE then, when you were there, were concussions ever considered a big deal ever? Because I'm sure when Chris Nowinski, and we could watch that at some point as what went wrong, but Chris Nowinski he retired due to concussions, and I bet there were some people in the company just going, well, he should have just sucked it up and just carried on. That kind of thing, because your arm isn't hanging off.
You just quoted it word for word, exactly what people said in the locker room.
Oh, genuinely? Is that the
Genuinely,
reaction?
it's a P word. Crybaby. He's not tough. He doesn't want it. Yeah, all that BS.
Did you get it? Did you ever confide in anyone that you had a concussion and they said, well, get out there? I mean, I know we sort of hinted at it at the beginning, but...
Oh, yeah, I confided I had a concussion after the first Heidenreich match, and they gave me 2 more Heidenreich matches.
They rewarded you.
So I was like, I feel great, guys. Nothing's wrong. And I was off the next week. It worked. Yeah, I always and that's something where there's many different elements during my course in my career, especially in WWE, that I wish I could have spoken up. And as a man now, retelling these stories, and I would love to say, yeah, I spoke up and I was a real man about it, but I wasn't. I kept my mouth shut. Now, I always went up to the talent and gave them advice and told them not to do certain things, and they'll be like, well, I'll get heat if I don't. get the heat. It's better than not remembering your name. Or if I was in the ring with them, I would give them much more stuff to do to me and sacrifice maybe my own mini push or whatever to protect them. There was a local that came in that had a concussion, and I refused to do certain moves to the local because they had that concussion. They didn't admit to it, but I could tell, and I gave them more in the match, and they never gave me another enhancement match after that. But I don't care. I don't care. 'Cause that dude is hopefully living a healthy life. Because I didn't have to get my Stevie Bomb in or my double underhook DDT or kick him in the face or what I who cares?
So when did the tide change then, as far as concussions in pro wrestling? I mean, it changed in, sports and everywhere else a lot quicker than it did in pro wrestling. They seem to be dragged kicking and screaming. I mean, now I think they gave like bursaries to Chris Nowinski's foundation, and they had him round a couple of times to give speeches to everyone about concussions and CTE and everything else. But I mean, was it Chris Benoit when they started taking it more seriously? Because I feel it was even longer after that.
I'm trying to think because we had Dr. Black. That guy was part of the wellness policy. I don't know about the actual concussion part of it. I do know the Benoit thing had something to do with nothing else but planting the seed. Now, also the cumulative effects of the legends that are in the company, we're probably starting to feel some of the effects of that. I don't have firsthand information on that. But the Nowinski thing was something that even in the NFL, they dragged their feet. And I think maybe that there, if I could get the timeline right, which I'm not completely sure of, the WWE loves to emulate what the NFL does. So I don't know with the concussion protocols if they because the performance center is kind of like a one-to-one representation of what an NFL or a pro sports training facility is supposed to mirror. And I think Hunter's been quoted as saying we have NFL level strength and conditioning, NFL level rehab, recovery, things like that, and tools of the trade. So I would dare say that it might have been the push from the NFL within its own entity and work with Nowinski that was like, kind of copycatting that in a good way. I don't know how long it took for WWE or if there was one incident with that
Mm.
that said
He was dismissed for a while. He was dismissed for a long time.
no, Nowinski was to, no, I'm saying how long it took them to finally come around, or if the NFL came around, so then the WWE copied the NFL.
Mm.
I'm saying I don't know what it took or if it was one incident with one of their favorites, one of the people that are figured in, one of the people they do consider to be within their family, their wrestling family, that said, "Oh, now we better start paying attention." That's my educated assumption, but I'm not sure. Now with me, it's he used to legitimately be the Tony Khan 60-second Matt Hardy concussion protocol. You feel okay? Get back out there.
Mm. Now, that being said, it's funny because I actually mentioned AEW, and do you remember a few years ago, I was in like a stadium stampede where Matt Hardy's head got absolutely rocked in
Yeah,
one
with
of
Sammy
those.
Guevara off that scissor lift. No,
Yeah, absolutely.
that was the stadium thing where they fought isn't it the same show where they fought on the football field, like
Yeah,
Jericho and them?
yeah, but this was during a lockdown, wasn't it? So they just had an empty stadium to like run wild in, I
At
think.
Gally's place. I think that's
Yeah,
where they had it, just where they had Collision with Tony Storm too.
yeah.
Yeah, that was something that absolutely completely angered me, and I got heat for being angered over my friend being hurt. Like, why you don't need to take up for Matt, he's a huge star. That was the exact reasoning. Like, he's my friend, I don't care. Or you're never gonna work in AEW with that attitude. Good. I don't need Tony Khan, like, doing that.
That being said, I thought that if a performer sustains a concussion in WWE or AEW or TNA or whatever it is nowadays, that the match is supposed to be stopped. But that all and these companies may even have the absolute best of intentions when it comes to concussions now. The problem is you're in a business where performers are pretending to be hurt when they're not, or pretending they're not hurt when they are. How the heck do you differentiate between those two? And then who's it up to stop a match? Is it a referee? Is it a doctor? In practical terms, how could this work in the modern day?
That is an excellent question because when you were talking, what I'm thinking about, that might have been why that concussion lawsuit got thrown out. It's such a gray area, and I could be speaking out of turn on that, but yes, how in the world do you take a scripted, choreographed product where we're selling people on the idea that we're making pretend that we're hurting each other and ourselves, but now this here is the real thing. Like, this is the real thing now. How do we you either suspend disbelief completely or you bring the reality of it into it. And now the fans are confused. That also just on a, I'm just talking about strictly from a theoretical level. Do you think that hurts the business because we don't know what to believe and what not to believe?
With that, just because you mentioned the concussion lawsuit, I think the reasoning for that being thrown out was, and as soon as I heard this coming out in like 2015 or whatever it was, I could have told you exactly the reason. And the reason is because how do you prove that the concussion that you may have CT or BNG now happened in a WWE ring? How can you not prove it was in another ring because you've been on the indies or whatever? There was only a couple of people on that list, and one of them is an example. I don't think he was on it, but an example I'd give is Enzo Amore, because he started in NXT. He didn't go on the indies, and then he had his entire career in WWE in WWE. If he'd never wrestled afterwards, he may have had a claim. But absolutely everyone else, pretty much. I'm not saying Enzo was on the lawsuit, I'm giving him as an example. But pretty much, apart from one or two other people on the list, everybody had wrestled elsewhere. A lot of them in ECW, for example. You know, like Sabu put his name on the list, and Demolition put their names on the list. And it's like, how can you prove conclusively that and this is also why you're an independent contractor, you're responsible for your own, well-being, of course, wink, wink, wink. But that's why it failed, because it was unbelievably flawed from the off.
It's just such a gray area when you're talking about making sure I have levels. We've been in 2 hours and nobody heard anything from me, but we have levels. Don't worry. Or don't you worry, as James would say, take a drink. Um, it's an
Do
incredible
I say
thing.
that?
You say, don't you worry to me.
Do
You
I?
taught me not to worry. Don't when I
Matt,
say
but you pick on these catchphrases that apparently I never even realised I had. It's
I'm
like yours. The one I know I do now is "Be that as it may." That I do say that.
or with that being said, which I picked
that
up
being
on
said.
you, if you've been a great influence on me, crack on. You haven't said on purpose, I think. And of course, you say what I've already forgotten that you said.
CTE lawsuit coming in.
Yeah, round two. It's
Be
such a
that
good-
as it may, WWE. Okay, so how do they implement this then? So they've got a concussion protocol that they can't implement because unless you are absolutely knocked out, like that low key thing that we saw a few weeks ago. Well,
you
then
do that, you bring Loki in, you're like guaranteed a concussion every day.
yeah, absolutely. For goodness sake, $350 minimum for that.
So what do? I have no idea. What you do is you err on the side of caution. You look at the move set. You don't have these things. They brought. By the way, let's revisit this. You basically made the pile driver a finish that could stretch your people out. And what have you done with that goodwill, the believability with the fans since the Randy Orton one and the Cody one? What have you done? You tease it here and there, right? But you haven't done anything, right? So now, and that's where it blurs the lines too. The cradle pile driver or the regular pile driver takes Randy Orton out for months. Cody Rhodes is stretchered. He does that at the Royal Rumble. Cody kicks out and wins with 3 crossroads. Now you don't know what a concussion is or what a stretcher is. They do it to themselves, James. We have a universe in wrestling where you can be as creative as you want, but you need to stay within the universe and, more importantly, the guardrails that you create to bring it as close to a reality that everybody, right down to the lowest common denominator of people to understand it. That's where they get it wrong. That's why it's confusing, and and maybe that's what saved them from a lawsuit. So what confuses the fans has also benefited them to not to pay a retroactive lawsuit of maybe millions or billions of dollars out.
Now, one thing I would have suggested, well, the referees need to be trained, medically trained, at least in first aid, that kind of thing. And also, if you think somebody's knocked out, the referee should be the one to make the call. You know, are you hurt? Here's the problem. Pro wrestlers aren't. Pro wrestlers are the same as MMA fighters or rugby players or NFL or whatever it might be. They want to tough it out. They want to be seen as tough. They want to get through the match. They want the plaudits. And also, they may not realise how hurt they are as well, especially with a head injury. So you could just automatically say, yeah, I'm fine. And you don't even know you've said it. You know, that kind of thing. So a ringside doctor's not going to be any help because they won't know. They're not in the ring. They won't know what they're seeing as well as a referee might. And then the referee's probably going to get lied to as well. So unless you're absolutely sparked clean out, how does one do anything? Here's the other thing. Just because I forgot to mention it with JD, maybe you mentioned it, I didn't catch it. He collapsed in the back when he got through the curtain and he collapsed a gorilla. So you only realise how hurt someone is, for the most part, when they get to the back.
When the adrenaline is reduced, when you finally come back down from the high. There is a story. We have to examine it more because I heard this story. There was a doctor, and that's where you run into it, especially with the NFL. Did it for a little while. They had their own doctors that would say, oh, he doesn't have a concussion. Then they had to go to a third party. WWE had their own doctors, trainers for a long time. That what are you going to do? You're a company doctor. You're a company trainer. Of course, you're going to side with WWE. I don't know what it's like today, but they need a true independent voice that no repercussions will come for making that objective decision on a talent. WWE will never let that happen. They need to control every narrative. So you might have a third party, and I believe there was the doctor who I had a really great relationship with, was a great guy, awesome dude. I'm not sure if this happened, but I know that there was a thing where he did say, this person so and so is suffering this. And he wasn't around much longer after that.
What would happen if, I mean, you basically said, but I'm saying in 2025, I know you've got to, surmise a bit more now. But what would happen if a referee or a doctor stopped a match early? One thing might happen in that sense, but what would happen if they stopped a match early and they were wrong?
Well, better to be wrong and safe than be wrong and someone dead or someone with a permanent condition. You know, you should ask, and this would be a great interview. Jimmy Corderas would be a great person, or a Mike Chioda, to ask how, if they've ever stopped a match on their own without being told, because they do have the earpiece. So if it's a call from Gorilla, it's an easy call. If it's their call and then they're being yelled at by Vince, like, what are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And that's the thing about Vince, too. I've seen certain elements. This is where the Jekyll and Hyde identity of this company and this man. I've seen times where things have happened and Vince has been completely heartless about this. Then I've seen stuff happen where Vince looks like he's almost on the verge of tears because it's like, oh my God, I hope he's going to be all right. Or end the match. End the match now. This guy's hurt. You see what I mean? But you never know what the old man's going to be like when he wakes up. You don't know what you're going to get. But I have seen him, like, legitimately, like, end it. This person's going to get hurt, and have that kind of empathy for it and not care about the result or the finish or the storyline or the angle.